candid conversations, unfiltered opinions, and humor with Avag Beck's podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our episode today. I have the pleasure of having with me today Mr. Avi Maderer. So Avi is an AI ChatGPT coach. If that hasn't clued you enough, we're going to be talking about AI and we're going to be talking about ChatGPT and everything AI. So the good, the bad, the in-between, the fear, the concerns, the benefits, and where we're possibly going from here. Some of us have lived long enough to see like different phases of technology come in and out. And there's usually a lot of frenzy around that where there's a lot of fear and also there's a lot of praise. So Abby and I are going to have this conversation. So I will ask questions and we're going to converse in a way that we know will be beneficial to our listeners. Pull up a chair and let's get talking. Avi, welcome.
Looking forward. Thank you very much. Welcome. Welcome to you as well. And I appreciate the opportunity to get in touch and explore.
Sounds great. Let's explore this.
There we go.
So AI in general, what do you think the concern is? Why are some people still apprehensive and not still on the bandwagon or still on the fence, I should say, about buying in completely?
So I like to explain it like this, first of all, as far as the usability and ease of access to AI. And I mean, it depends what the tools are. If we speak specifically about ChatGPT and creativity, prose, articles, research, not even getting into technical, difficult, scary things like robotics and etc. Right? Just the day-to-day individual and their use and their ability to make life easier. So I like to say that if you know how to send an email, then using ChatGPT or Claude or whatever tool you're going to use is a lot easier than that. And all you have to do is get in there. That said, there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of fact checking that we still have to do. There's a lot of mitigation and human judgment that we have to apply. As far as why people are hesitant to get into it, I think it's really a matter of one of two things. One is that there is still a tendency to be afraid of technology, depending on what age people are. I know, for example, I'm 62 years, born in 1963, and everyone that's a year or more older than I am are technophobes. They're literally afraid. Not everyone, obviously not.
Yeah,
that's a generalization. But a lot of people are afraid of using a spreadsheet or sending an email or even searching the internet. It's very scary for them. Anyone that's my age and younger does not have that issue. Anyone that's 14 and under is born with AI in their hands.
Right.
So, and we've only really been using it worldwide for 3 years, perhaps. So, but that's the biggest stumbling block is people's fear of using the opportunity, really, of the technology, because they're still stuck in that other technophobe frame of mind.
Right. So let's talk about technophobia for a little bit. So how much of cultural nuance influences that technophobia? We're talking about beliefs, exposure, and things of that nature. How much of that plays into that?
I would say a lot, and I'm going to possibly steer the conversation towards something that literally keeps me up at night. And it's more than just rumor that AI, ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or whatever tool you're using hallucinates or it lies. It doesn't really lie because it doesn't have a mind. So it's not really lying. But what it really is, and that's the main difference that a lot of people don't understand, is that this is not software where it's pre-programmed by a human being to give you the right answers and the whole quality assurance process that the programmers go through to make sure that the software works properly. So if you use a Google spreadsheet or an Excel spreadsheet and you put in numbers in a certain formula, you know you're going to get the right answer. 0.9% of the time, if you're drafting a document, a letter or an essay or a research paper, the spell check is going to catch the issue for you. The reality, though, is that with AI, you get a lot of nonsense out of it still. Even though it's way, way better than it used to be. For example, I do some programming in Python and other languages, and what used to take me a month can take me 10 minutes now. And then we get into issues, of course, of job displacement and things like that in the world, and what do we do with that? So I think people are afraid of the lack of accuracy, possibly even more so than the technophobia of it, and that's the cultural side of it. If I can take a minute and give you an example. Literally last night, I was sitting with my son, 20 plus, and we were talking about how important it is for him to set up a pension fund. Right? I said, when I was thinking about these things 40 years ago, all of a sudden it's 40 years later. Right? I'm 60 years old, 62, and all of a sudden that time, I'm 10 years away or whatever. I don't plan on, not working. I enjoy working, but that time comes by. Excuse me. I put in. I asked him, what would happen if you took $100, €100 or pound or whatever currency you're going to use, and you put it into a fund every month, like clockwork, for 40 years, and you earned, based on the S&P stock market index, 11 to 13% a year. So 1% compounded every month, and it's compounding on itself, and plus you're contributing every month. What number would you come up with? So we were back and forth a little bit about guessing, and then we said, well, let's put it to Claude, see what Claude says, right, or ChatGPT. So I think I started with ChatGPT, and I put it in, and, very nicely. And it gave me the mathematics and all these fancy formulas of how to calculate it. And it came up with this number of $1 billion on $100 a month. I said, well, that's pretty good. And he said, he's a little bit financially savvy, but I have more experience. So he said, that just doesn't sound right.
Right.
It sounds like way too much.
Yes.
And I put it back to the same platform to chat, and it said, yeah, that's the number. Let me double check. That's the number. Okay. I said, let's see what Claude does. Went over to Claude, same question. We got 1.7 million. So ChatGPT came up with a number that was 1,000 times higher with all this fancy mathematics that it displayed. And then Claude came up with 1.7. Now, then we went to, I think it was Motley Fool or one of the investment sites, and we put in a compounded interest calculator, and it's just straight math. Because how does AI work? It works on a probability. It's mathematics. The probable answer for the probable next word that you need in this sentence, in this sentence, or this equation, or this problem that we're solving is X. That's how AI works. It's not set data, but the calculator is a calculator. This plus this times this, et cetera, et cetera. And it came up with the accurate number of $1.2 million for that exercise of 100 times 40 years on a monthly basis, compounded interest. So now us human beings have to have judgment. We have to have critical thinking. So there's a lot of truth getting to your question of why are people still afraid to use it. I think is a combination of not trusting, one, and two is that just that ingrained technophobia, perhaps for the older people, my age or whatever. But I think there's still a lack of trust and knowing that it doesn't work. The challenge, of course, is that we have no choice but to use it and to apply our judgment. And that's before we even ask the question, that is in the future. And we ask a question, a future of work, that's really the skill that we need in society is human judgment. And that is like an umbrella skill for critical thinking, bias mitigation, fact checking, etc. Yeah. A long answer to a little question.
No, that was absolutely necessary because it shows how AI is not a one-size-fits-all. It shows how different platforms would offer you different results. However, on the flip side of that, when we're talking about a monthly full, calculator, stock market today, appreciation of the dollar and, a projection of what that will turn into in 40 years. But then again, we don't know what the 40 years from now holds, right? The calculator is here and now, right? There's that reality, right? We don't know what the dollar will be valued as in 40 years, right? We don't know whether it's the euro, the naira for the Nigerian currency or whatever. We don't know that value today. That's basically a projection into the future. One could argue that, granted, that was a lot of money. When you mentioned the amount, I was like, what? But I knew that was a steep projection. And one could argue that maybe chat is kind of like projecting, but that is too much of a projection. So it brings me to my next point and question exactly. We only deal with here and now, which is, it's partly a prompting question. With everything in life, there's always improvements required. So yes, we have this new bright new shiny toy called AI, and part of this shiny toy collective is ChatGPT and the other Grok, Perplexity, you name it,
Sure.
within the whole suite of AI.
Right.
So how much patience do we have to improve these tools? And how much is everybody willing to contribute to improve these tools? We all have careers, we all have expertise that we utilize these tools for. Yes, it works, but it's a little rusty, a little rough around the edges. How much are we willing to contribute our expertise without the fear of losing our jobs to AI? Because there's also that apprehension that if I help in contributing and making this tool better, then this tool is going to replace me. How do we navigate that?
That's a very, very loaded set of statements you just gave. All
One
right,
at a time.
so one at a time. So first, if I may go back about a minute or two ago, and I'll say that the difference between knowing what the reality is today and what is in 40 years from now has changed over the last few years. So if we were to go and use those calculations, if we get back to that pension fund exercise, if we were to do that exercise 5 years ago or 3 years ago, it's pretty reliable that it's going to be accurate based on the history of the stock market and based on just straight math. Chances are, obviously, and this, we'll put in the little plug here that this is not investment advice or of any sort,
is
et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
It is absolutely not. But the likelihood of those calculations and that strategy for an individual to be accurate and probable and realistic would be pretty high. The challenge today is that AI is affecting all of society all at once at
Right.
super fast speed. So we really don't know. We can assume at a much higher level of risk that the way things have been are the way that things are going to be in our lifetime in any case. But that's, if I'm not mistaken, something like 70% of trades on the stock market are now done in an automated way. And when we get into questions of job displacement, and I'm going to answer your question as to why should I contribute to this thing if it's going to take away my job, that job displacement is real. There's already 20 to 25% unemployment at the entry level. People that are graduating from college or university, they're not in the trades, that are in things like accounting, bookkeeping, design, graphic design, journalism. All these trades or all these occupations are already seeing unemployment. And then we get into the question of what I call the experience gap, where you would have, let's say, a lawyer. So a way that a lawyer would learn the trade is that they would be working those crazy 12 to 15-hour days in the law office and reviewing documents and doing all the grunt work. And then over the number of years, they would gain experience. The problem is now that AI is doing all that work for them, on the one hand. So they don't have the 10 or 20 years of experience that the senior lawyer has or that the radiologist has. Even surgery. If you look at now, gallbladder surgery is being done in Germany robotically. It's not a doctor with their hands on some kind of
Robotic
joystick.
Yeah.
It's a programmed machine that does, outside of the anesthetics, the entire surgery, hands off.
Wow.
Right? Radiologists. So, 20, 30 years ago, it used to be one of the highest paying jobs in North America. And then they would outsource most of the analysis of x-rays out to places like India because it was cheaper labor. And also they would do a follow the sun kind of strategy where they would get their results overnight. Now they put it into AI. And not only is it taking away radiologist jobs, it's doing a better job. So there's all these issues. When it comes to why should I contribute? First of all, how much we're contributing, I don't really know, because AI is learning, on the one hand, the general large language model of the old data, which is now, let's say, a year old, is all basically researched on the internet and whatever is out there. Companies are using internal knowledge bases. So they're putting their own documents in and combining that with the general knowledge of the world to come up with more specific, nuanced, proprietary information and AI produced data and results that are specific to their own companies. At the same time, there is sort of a grassroots movement, social movement of, I'm going to contribute to this thing, almost like Wikipedia, of going in and feeding it more accurate information. Hopefully, I know what I'm talking about and, it's my truth.
Right.
And therefore, somehow in that very minor way, contributing. But if 1 billion people do that, then it can get better. If those 1 billion people have accurate information to feed it.
Yeah. So I happen to be an expert contributor. I happen to contribute to one of the big large language module
Okay.
companies. And what they're doing now to address the problem with the hallucination is that they're actually, through fractional work, working with experts in various career paths to actually create tasks in a way of prompting. So
Okay.
what is your day to day when it comes to performing tasks to mitigate the prompting hallucination? So going back to the conversation of improving what we have is
Sure.
that the same way the companies, all the big companies or whatever big, small companies come up with AI tools to help navigate workforce need and task needs or whatever, they're going to find ways to improve it.
Sure.
So in doing things like that, where do you think we stand? Even though everybody's not on the bandwagon of contributing their expertise because of the concern of losing their jobs. When all of this started, I remember the conversation, even 2 years ago, even a year ago. It's like, oh, the medical world is untouchable by AI because it requires skill certification to do what we do. All of these extra things. However, as I keep my ear on the ground in the industry, I'm seeing more and more stuff. I'm in healthcare. Healthcare is difficult to break into. There's a lot of red tapes.
Right.
But when it comes to AI, there's more adoption. Granted, it's not there yet. There's openness to adopt a lot of AI techniques, especially when it comes to treatment outcomes. So you talked about gallbladder surgery. That's incredible. Is being adopted into like a prostate resection procedure, something that carried a risk of impotence for men. Now, that is a fear that has been eliminated because this resection surgery is very precise. It goes in, recovery is short, management of that procedure, which would involve a lot of bleeding, clots, and all of these things, all of that is reduced. So on the other side of things, the benefit of it is very evident. However, it's still eliminating certain roles. It goes along with everybody, the GLP-1s, people disliking GLP-1s. First, it was welcomed. Now it's heavily disliked because a lot of bariatric practices are being put out of business. So at what point do we say, okay, this thing is helpful and let's see how we can benefit from this wave as opposed to, okay, it's taking everything from everybody. So do you think we'll ever get there, especially with AI? We've gotten there with the World Wide Web. Now it's basically everybody uses it. So do you think we'll get to a point where AI can be part of our practices without complete loss of a skill set or a career?
So AI is very pervasive. It's across every industry. It's across every skill set. It's around the world. Its adoption, as you know, I think we're at 800 million users now, if I'm not mistaken, around the world. And that's taken no time. I had a very brief discussion. I saw someone and I was waiting for, I think it was a bus or a train or something. And he asked me, what do you do? And we're talking. I told him I'm in AI. And he said, he's a young man. And he said, he's thinking about getting into industrial engineering. And do I think AI is going to affect it? And I said, well, it depends. If you want to get into the design level, the building level of the engineering and how to do the wiring and installation and environmental controls and all that, don't bother. Because AI is just going to do it. Unless you're the expert that knows how to deal with the 5% anomalies in situations. But in regular construction, no. if you're going to be the actual physical wire or plumbing instructor, installer, you'll have time. And it's the same with everything. When you talk about medical, I'm pretty sure you know that it's no longer that the medical field is untouchable, but most likely the interpersonal types of positions like nursing, for example, are safe for now. I'll clarify that. But in the long term, less so, but still, okay? The others, doctors, it takes the AI is already like 85% accurate in diagnoses. And it takes so much less time and so much, and especially when you get into the filings and the insurance claims and all the procedures and, then tying together the lab tests, et cetera, and the booking. So AI does it and it gets it all wrapped up in a day instead of months sometimes.
Right.
Depending on what you're doing. And why do I say nursing, for example, is safe for now? Because of the baby boom and the aging population and lower birth rates in the younger population in most of the Western countries, we're getting into a situation where elderly care, for example, and nursing care is going to come into two categories, people with money and people with less money.
Absolutely.
So the AI is going to have some kind of, if it's not a plasma on some funny wheels, maybe even a very real humanoid, they call it, looking robot that will be the role of the companion. And then some people will have the finances to finance a higher level service of real human interaction, right? But it's not hard to imagine that a family that can't afford a full-time carer or a full-time companion or what have you for real, so they'll use the AI and it costs them 10% of a real human being, right? But then there'll be people that'll want the real human being. The same thing with call centers.
Right.
Everything's automated. Everything, it's much conducive and pleasant to use the automated call centers now than it used to be. Press 1 for this and press 3 for that, and then wait a long time, etc. Now the automation has made it a lot more pleasant, but people will pay a premium. I'll pay $5 extra and speak to a real person. So it's really from just the speed and the how widespread the engagement is with AI in every industry, in every country, in every age group. There's really no choice.
Right.
So, that nice idea of I'm going to resist, I'm not going to contribute. Well, first of all, you don't have to, right? And if you choose to, that's great. It could be, part of one's volunteer activities if they want to contribute to society and the world and make the world a better place, but they don't have to. But it's happening already. There's really no choice. And then the question becomes, well, so what do we do? Right? What do we do as human beings? Because those graphic designers and the accountants and the bookkeepers and the young lawyers, their jobs are being displaced. So then what do they do? And the direction for that is all about the human contact, the human interpersonal contact. I actually had another podcast that I was interviewed on earlier today, and we were talking about how there used to be, I don't know, 100 years ago, maybe less, where there was a big push towards a 5-day work week.
Yeah.
And quite realistically, we're going to get to a 3-day work week. Before we talk about how does all that get financed and how do people make a living, which are very big and important questions, well, what do we do with the rest of our time? And over the last 20 years or so with technology, we humans have become further and further distanced because we're stuck on our screens. And you go to a restaurant and you see families sitting there and nobody's talking to each other. And it's very sad. But this actually might be the universe's way of forcing us to get back in touch. Not only because we have the time, but because there's just no choice. Because the AI is taking care of so many things, but there's so many human level things that we have to deal with interpersonally that maybe we're going to be forced to that in a good way, one of the good outcomes of it. But I don't think trying to avoid the tide of this huge amount of sunshine that's coming in with this AI and how it's affecting the world, I don't think we can avoid it. And we really, it's just a matter of just accepting that and leveraging it and not making the best of it, but really using it to improve ourselves and the world and our situation.
Yeah. I love how you use leveraging because that is the one way a person can pivot and
absolutely.
increase their usability in a sense in the corporate world. Pivoting and becoming a prompter, an expert prompter, is the one way a person can achieve longevity in their space and their place of expertise. And I've had this conversation, privately with my students, even on podcasts. Yes, if you're stagnant, if you're not buying into the reality that AI again is pervasive and it's basically everywhere, you're going to be left behind. And for you to couple your human intelligence with the AI intelligence to get the best out of it is the one way to basically be at the top of your industry. And that is what I feel like some people don't quite understand, or that just hesitant to understand or follow through. So I like how you utilize that word there. So going back to healthcare, just about 5 years ago, many a medical floor, many a psychiatric floors, we used to have one-to-one sitters. Who are sitters? Sitters are basically people assigned a role to sit in a room with a person who was either a danger to themselves or others, or confused. Confusion can range from anywhere from dementia to substance withdrawal or to confusion of any kind. You name it, right? A whole gamut. But because of staffing and shortage, often we'll place one personnel in a room with two confused people, right? To manage that.
Okay.
However, with technology, this is not an advertisement of any, I don't even know if I want to say their name, but I'll say it. So we now have technology where we have remote monitoring. We have this equipment that we can put in a room, dedicate one per patient, and there is somebody on the other side monitoring this person while the nurses and the nursing staff are running around performing those hands-on care needs.
Okay.
From medication administration to care to treatment, everything. That is not something that happened 5 years ago. But now we have that technology, welcoming technology. So if this person is getting out of bed, an alarm sounds, they push an alarm, we can hear it. We know what that machine's alarm sounds like. So it's kind of like somebody get in here and try to put hands to make sure this person doesn't fall out of bed, get out of bed, whatever the case. Can that technology be improved with the use of AI? I believe so.
Sure.
However, that was something that was embraced, and that's something that freed up hands. That's also something that cost savings with hiring personnel and having. So going back to healthcare a little bit, because again, is my area of expertise. I don't know how much you know about healthcare, but healthcare is very slow to change because of the sensitivity.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're talking about HIPAA.
It's mission critical, and it's HIPAA in the States. And
yes,
Sure.
Right. So do you think that healthcare can afford to be slow to change the way it's traditionally known to be in the age of AI?
Okay, so first of all, resistance to change. I'm just going to not on a legislative or policy level, but just from a humanistic openness to high risk, mission critical situations. You get on a plane, and 99% of the flight is on autopilot, right? So, we're used to that. It's just a matter of a mindset. I believe that it's going to be a situation where it's forced. There's just going to be no option. Why? Because some 100 years ago, when pension plans were designed for people to have a pension at the age of 65 and retire at the age of 65, well, less people lived until 65. So the model worked very nicely. Today, thank God, people are living a lot longer. With that, as you know, comes a lot more health challenges. As people get older and older, physical challenges. And yes, there's technology and medicine that makes things a lot better than they used to be. But life expectancy today in the West, 90 plus. And the tax base to fund all that is getting smaller and smaller because of lower birth rates. So there's really no choice but to allow in those technological efficiencies. So I believe that is what's going to pressure the all industries and all areas of humanities socially to take on the change a lot earlier than later. Just as a tangent, one of my big concerns is that when you look at, there's elections around the world all the time, different seasons. In the United States, it's in 2028 is the next presidential election. There's different regional elections and provincial and state elections and municipal elections. Not that I follow it all the time, and I don't have like an AI, an agent that's searching for this. Maybe I should actually, but because it's easy enough to do, and I always bring up this issue. I have not yet seen a politician that is running on the platform of dealing with the social issues that AI creates. I've seen investment issues. I've seen energy issues, infrastructure issues, maybe a little bit of education, but not the social aspects. And one of the social aspects is, like you're saying, is the medical field. And how do we, as a society, as civilization, move that forward? So it's sadly, maybe it takes a tragedy of some sort to get people to wake up and deal with it. But it'll happen like everything else. And it already is happening. My daughter just graduated nursing, actually, and she says they use AI all the time. They're always confirming meds, and now with my exercise with my son, with the pension thing, now I'm a little bit scared. But they're going in and using it for calculations of dosages and the chemistry and things like that. With, of course, not only her teachers monitoring and her senior staff, because now she's already working as a nurse, but putting in those mechanisms to monitor. Certainly, AI is in radiology, as we described. It's in surgery. I'm sure that in nursing, I don't know nursing deep enough to know where the interpersonal know, but certainly part of the reporting and part of the monitoring, like you were saying, having the presence of some kind of monitor. That monitor that you were talking about, there's someone watching.
Yes, somebody's watching remotely. The company is quite big. I do not want to advertise for them. I don't want to say
that's fine.
It rolls in and the camera is focused on the person. There's a screen.
Okay.
And the person can actually prompt the person, please do not get up, but the alarm sounds. And
okay. So it's sort of a robot of sorts.
It's sort of a robot, but there's somebody remotely monitoring it.
Okay.
So, talking about nursing education or nursing in general, I'm a nursing professor, and there's something that we traditionally still do in nursing education, is that we do have safeguards in place that are AI in nature, whether we want to agree or not. The use of Epic. Epic is everywhere. I can't even advertise them. They're big. Epic has certain that medication error is hard to make. So before you administer medication to anybody, you have to scan the patient's wristband and then scan the medication, and it'll tell you the dosage or the dosage what you just scanned. So if there were 2 tablets to make up a dose, the order was for 500 milligram, you scan a 250 milligram tablet, it will show you scan only 250. Something is missing. So even with all of that, we still teach traditionally in nursing school how to calculate.
Do the math. Yes.
Do the math. Dosage calculation.
Right.
You do the math, because we also have downtime. What a downtime. Downtime is for updates, computer updates. Okay. What if you work that night shift? Because it usually happens overnight. What if you work night shift and downtime was planned for, say, to happen in an hour or 2 for computer updates, debugging, whatever. And you had critical medication to give, and the IV pump is no longer connecting to Epic, and you have to manually program that pump. You have to know how to do that, because you know what? You can no longer scan and scan. So we still teach the traditional way of doing things, because situations do happen where you have to manually do those things. So sometimes downtime do go the whole night. It was planned for 2 hours, something happened. Guess what? If your patient was going for surgery, something has to give. You have to still do your work. So this is where I count my blessings, and I'm very, very grateful that I was able to experience nursing when nursing was less computerized.
So I would actually add to that a couple things. One is that, yes, absolutely. It's like, the flight idea where, yes, there's autopilot, but the pilots can turn it off.
Right.
If, God forbid, there's a situation, they can manually fly the plane. The same thing here. If there's downtime, the systems go down, you can do it yourself. But I'll take it even a step further. A couple of things. One is when we talk about the experience gap, so that type of model where the nurses have no choice but to actually learn what is going on and how to do those calculations and the chemistry and et cetera, right, based on each individual patient's situation, teaches them the critical thinking and teaches them the human judgment skills. So that's one thing that they have to apply anyway. What if all of a sudden, in that millisecond between when the computer said, give this person this dose and here it is, and it's all accurate and it's the 500 mils, etc. And then all of a sudden something happened to the patient. In that millisecond between the dispensing of the medicine from the dispensary,
Right.
and then applying the medication to the patient. So
Right.
you need to know how to do that. You need to also, as the nurse, check and understand that there's something off here. Doesn't make sense. That has to be part of the training.
Right.
And then you get into, well, so is the medical field going to now accept AI? So that would be a policy level condition that we're never giving up because it's mission critical. We're never giving up on the human judgment here.
Right.
And in order to become a nurse or a doctor or whatever it is, you have to know how to do this and apply it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That goes back to being an expert, right? In
Sure.
understanding, because at the end of the day, the human brain, AI is beautiful, great, but the human brain still supersedes any AI. Large language model, your reasoning and your expertise is absolutely needed, right?
Absolutely.
So if you don't know the difference and the accuracies, you'll accept anything, right?
Right.
So if I am not aware that this dose for this pediatric patient is too much based on their weight and height, I may administer a critical medication that may turn very serious very quickly, right? If I do not understand that a geriatric patient's metabolism over time is not the same as a 40-year-old, and they process medication, especially with opioids, very differently, I may over-medicate somebody. So at the end of the day, is really the expertise, which again goes back to that conversation, that regardless of where we go with AI, it is very important that you own your expertise and you know how to prompt the AI and you know how to identify those hallucinations or the falsitude or whatever it is that you can say, okay, you know what? Yeah, close, but not quite. Right. So, it's very important for us to own our craft or skills, whatever it is, so we can be in a position where we can say, let's try that again. And when it comes to policies, you mentioned policy. I'm very interested to see where the policies go when it has to do with, AI in healthcare and how to navigate that, because that is a very interesting slope. Where do we start? Where do we stop? And how much or how far can we push it?
You know the medical field a lot better than I do, but my sense is that as time progresses, we talk about, I don't know, the last 100 years, the medical field has become more safer and safer as far as policy is concerned, right? I don't think that there's anything in medicine that's becoming lax. And that policy is am I wrong? I could be wrong.
There are areas we can improve.
Oh, for sure. I'm not saying there's no room for improvement.
Right.
I'm just saying that we haven't dropped policies because it's not worth it. Right. Or because we're lazy or because governments are lazy. There are always going to be trade-offs between, just look at costs, right? I did 20 years ago, I did a project with a local Ministry of Health office. And I was speaking with the regional director for social services, and they told me we have to make decisions between, do we do anti-smoking or do we do obesity? We can't do both because everything has a cost. And then what's the likely outcome? And then, what are the later effects for addressing this issue as opposed to that issue? And that's the way policy works. But I don't think anyone's becoming lax, certainly not in the West in any case, as far as policy and how it's applied to the medical world.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen with AI, I trust.
Not becoming lax. I think certain policies are crippling sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but, I'm curious to see where all of this goes. So let's talk about what you do, Avi, and what you offer and your product and services.
Sure.
Who are the people that come to you, you service or you work with? And, where can people find you?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for asking. And I'll actually just, you like the word leverage. So I'm going to leverage something that you said some 10 minutes ago or so about how people must learn the skills of prompting and using AI. And there's this is not against you, this next sentence, but there's a very passe statement from, the early 2025s,
Right.
half a year ago or so, because things move so fast.
Right.
You're not going to lose your job to AI, you're going to lose your job to someone who's using AI. Right. And that's a very popular statement, except
Mm.
that is already, we're not there. We're way
Right.
past that because
Right.
everyone's using AI. And if you're not, then, that's that individual's problem. So when you ask, what do? I coach people in two specific areas. One is as far as developing their human judgment, as I was talking about a few times here, with critical thinking and with bias mitigation. Certainly on the technical level, it's not really my focus, but I can help people with on the technical level as far as, the prompting and the data or knowledge base and the proprietary data, et cetera. But it's really more about developing critical thinking skills and human judgment in their field, and also the human level of how to become a leader within an organization, or even if someone is self-employed and freelance and on their own. So that's one part. The other part that I do in coaching is I find it very, very important today because of just from a risk management point of view,
Okay.
to help people get into the frame of mind of fractional work. You mentioned fractional before, right? I mean, long gone are the days of, the 40-year career.
Yeah.
Right. Those are almost over, if not over
Yeah.
completely already in the
Right.
world. But so is the full-time job.
Yes.
And because the change is, it's really in our face. It's like now it's in a year or two or 5, 10 max. So
Yeah.
there's huge, huge upheavals in the workplace, in the
Yeah.
workforce. So I help people from an internal emotional coaching level to get into that frame of mind of diversifying, at least maybe not skills wise, maybe that as well, but certainly just being used to the idea of carrying 2, 3 jobs, right? And not, 24 hours a day, still work
Right.
2, 3 hours each job,
Right.
whatever it is, but get into that frame of mind of a fractional work, of part-time
Right.
work, for those that don't know what fractional work is. So I help people at really a life coaching level as far as that is. And to get in touch with me, it's very easy. I have a website. It's called futureofpurpose.org/contact, or just go there and you'll find the contact, /connect rather, futureofpurpose.org/connect. And there's a form there, and then I'll get an email and we can go from there.
We'll make all of that available. Fractional work. Oh my goodness. Before I get excited about this, everything Avi just said will be available in the show notes. So in case you can catch it, you can just click right in and, get in contact with him. Well, fractional work is where it is. And I think there's also resistance there. We're talking about resistance with the use of
Sure.
AI, but there's also this traditionalism that comes with employment. The 40 hours work week, the
Right.
5 days a week, the pension, the retirement, the benefits, all of these things. I'm answering my question, but also asking it at the same time. What would it take for people to really kind of like settle into understanding that it's fast, because it's not slowly moving that direction? You said 10 years. Is really rapidly going to that direction where people are able to, because the fallacy of work-life balance, laughable. So people are really owning their time and balancing their lives in a way that we're more alert. You mentioned maybe this is the universe's way of forcing us to go back and kind of like see each other again. But we're now realizing that there's been a lot of disconnect. The 2-hour commute to work, staying in a cubicle for 8 hours a week, basically coming home to eat and sleep, and then going back to work. It's kind of forcing us into it. But what do you think the resistance is, other than the traditionalist mindset of what a job is?
So certainly that. It's just that's the way it's always been, kind of thing.
Right.
Fear
Mm,
of making the change, not understanding. There's a lot of people that think in terms of this AI thing that's going on
right.
now and the changes that are happening in the world. Many people are still talking in terms of the industrial revolutions. So you had the transition from horses to cars, or from telegraph to telephones, or from manual paper ledgers for accountants to spreadsheets.
Right.
But all those things took or gave us the luxury of 10, 20 plus years to make those changes and to learn the new skills. And they created new industries and new jobs. And, you know, there were new skills that were needed. Here, we've been given a year or two, and us as human beings, we may be capable of making the change, but we're not used to making change so fast. People don't realize that it's different. And I'd like to make the comparison not to those types of technological or industrial changes, evolutionary changes, but societal changes. So the last time that something on that scale happened was probably during the Enlightenment. And, you know, so we're talking about mid 1600s to early 1800s, where the philosophers of the time were trying to better the human condition. And then they were fighting against women being able to vote, women being able to read and get educated, and to become teachers and educate and become part of society and have a say in the world. And not just women, everything. They were fighting against the church and against the landowners and against the monarchs and fighting against this power, the size of this change that's happening. I mean, then the world was Europe, really. I mean, there was Africa, of course, with its population. America was very, very sparse, and South America had its populations, but it was really Europe that was happening. And so that was a quote unquote worldwide level change. And that's the type of change that we're having. So the resistance is that I don't think people understand how fast this is happening. So people are avoiding it.
It's happening, people. It's happening.
Oh, without question. I mean, just look at the example I gave, you know, at the beginning of our conversation, right? I do some programming.
Yes.
And what used to take me a month takes me 10 minutes to an hour.
That's right.
And it's very easy. And all you have to do, the way I work with ChatGPT, for example, I have my computer open. I have a couple screens open, probably because I just haven't figured out how to do it yet or tried to figure out. My wife types about 100 words a minute. I type about 30 words a minute. But now I type about 1,000 words a minute.
Oh, okay.
Right? Why? Because I speak into my ChatGPT on my phone, and then I refresh my browser and I see my prompt. I might adjust it a little bit, whatever. I press play or send or whatever it is, and it gives me 1,000 words or whatever I'm doing. And that's the speed of the change. And like you said, it's so pervasive and so across. So I think it's an avoidance thing, but we have to be careful with it, like anything else.
I agree.
Actually, in the interview I was doing earlier today, the host was talking about how he has this idea that there's a problem besides the adults that have this issue. Okay. But there are children that use ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and it's always so polite.
Yes.
Wow, that's a great idea. And I do it myself. I'll put in a thing. What do you think of this? And it'll say, Avi, that's a great idea. And I wait for that first word. Brilliant. And I feel good. But the kids then get into this addicted, they get a hit of the dopamine or whatever the chemical is. You would know the chemical better than I. And that's a problem because not everything is rosy, right?
Not everything is rosy, but we already ruined that with social media. Yes. Let's not blame AI for that. We ruined that with social media when we started living for the likes and the hearts and the comments and the repost and that
absolutely.
That really took away a lot of intrinsic validation. We're more focused on the extrinsic validation. And people actually, this picture only got whatever likes. The other one got 1,000. Like, did you like it or not? Did you like the picture? That's all that matters.
Not only that, did you experience it? Instead of watching the sunrise through your phone, watch the sunrise. That's it's a very sad, tragic situation.
Yes, but I think more and more, my hope sometimes feels very weak to use in a sentence for me. I struggle with it a little bit, but in this case, I'm going to use it. I hope with freeing up time, we can actually have time to reconnect, rebuild, and disconnect. But I don't know how realistic that is.
Because?
Well, are we going to just fill the void with more stuff?
More gaming and more movies?
More gaming, more exactly. Because we're used to that dopamine hit. It goes back to that hip-hop song. Now that we found the what are we going to do? It's like, okay, what else?
So you know what? Actually, on a positive note, on a hopeful note.
Yes.
I started a publication. I put out my first publication of it this week. It's called The Pulse, and it
Okay.
monitors what's going on in AI in the world, policy
Right.
wise, technology wise, human interaction wise. And I tell chat in my script for it to make sure that you double check and find that these are real sources and real programs, and etc.
Right.
And the big guys like OpenAI and Anthropic, Microsoft, Google, they're investing now billions of dollars
Right.
in education. Not in education about how to use AI, but in the educational systems, in the school. Okay. There's a school system. They have about 100 branches now in the United States called Alpha, and they're using what's called a reverse classroom model. Reverse classroom model basically is where you have the teacher is acting as a coach or a mentor.
Yes.
So it's no longer 6 hours or whatever it is in the classroom where all they're doing is feeding information.
Yeah.
The student takes notes, and then they get a test at the end of the day.
Right.
The students are actively pursuing projects in groups together for several hours a day, and they sit for a couple hours with the mentor teacher that guides the discussion in the classroom of 20, 30 students.
Yeah.
And that, besides the fact that the kids are now using their brains and needing to work through the problems and building those neural pathways, they're socializing.
So I use that in nursing, in my nursing classroom. It's called Flip the Classroom, case studies. So that is the best way because I can read a PowerPoint. You can read a PowerPoint. I can talk at you. You can tune me out. So if I want you to benefit from this, I will give you a case study, put you in groups. Each group has a different case related to the same case study. So we can all discuss, you discuss within your little clusters. And as a whole, whatever you learned, whatever you came up with for that case study, you share with the whole classroom and each cluster does the same thing. So now we have shared diagnoses across endocrine, reproduction, geriatric. So we're all learning. So I could say, I didn't know that. I'll be the first professor to say, oh my goodness, that was a great fact. I did not even know that. Thank you for teaching me that. And it causes everybody to be open and honest with discovering brand new information. So I'll say this. I don't mean to piss my Africans off because we're very traditional people. I've never really subscribed to the mindset of a traditionalist thinking. There's always a different way to do things. I understand we do certain things to honor our ancestors and the people that came before us, but they did the best they could with whatever resources that they had. How can we change things? It's exciting that these big companies are willing to, invest in education as somebody in academia, as opposed to utilizing AI in the way everybody thinks we're utilizing AI for thinking for the students, but really utilizing those AI tools to help students think for themselves, help expedite the learning process, even with virtual reality. I may not always have a patient with a heart attack all the time for my students, but we can simulate it, right? We can simulate it. We can put them in an environment where they have to think critically. Those, skills are built over time. So when they're in the real scenarios, like, okay, that crazy old professor got me doing this, and I kind of know how to react. So that's very exciting. Thank you for sharing that. I'll look into it, actually. Okay. Yeah. Oh my goodness, Avi, this was such a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Idongesit.
Thank you for being here.
It was wonderful, and I'm happy to come on again at some time if you like.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. There goes that word hope again. I hope somebody gained something from this conversation, and let us know what you think. Is there anything we discussed that has been nagging at you, or you have something to contribute? Because this conversation is going to keep going. It's not going to stop anytime soon. So thank you, everybody. I'm very grateful for your time. I am very grateful for you. I'm grateful for your time. Thank you for coming on.
All right.
Thank you,
You're very
sir.
welcome. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. Take care of yourselves.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to AvigBeck's podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It really helps us out. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the discussion. So join us on social media or drop us a message. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and keep pushing the boundaries of your world.